Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. Today I want to talk about something a little bit fun, a little bit interesting, and hopefully something that can generate a fair bit of conversation down below. And that is the want list. The list of knives that are floating around in your mind and mine, I think in most knife enthusiasts' minds, where we go, these are knives that I want to get my hands on. Maybe they're knives that we say, if I won the lottery or had some kind of windfall, I'd go out and buy them tomorrow. But in the meantime, they're knives that I'm actively interested in owning and adding to my collection. Okay, and that's how I've tried to limit this. So I don't have knives on here that are like outlandishly expensive or impossible to get. These are knives that are realistic and knives that I do plan to add to the collection at some point in the not too distant future, if all things go according to plan. And so I want to share those with you, but I also want to share with you some of the reasons that a knife ends up on that list. Whether it's a knife that I've never seen before or whether it's a knife that I have tried and because of my experience know that that's a knife I really, really want. So the first thing I want to point out is I tend to be drawn to knives that are simple and functional while still being interesting and attractive. Okay, so these knives, I put these up here on the screen first because they exemplify what I'm talking about at this point. And that is, these are knives that are simple, but they have a cool design that's interesting and compelling. And because of that, I find them extremely, I just find them extremely appealing. A knife that looks nice, looks well designed, but then is also simple and functional. All right, I don't like a knife that goes too far in some direction and gets to the point where it's not highly usable or it's just too chaotic, okay? So that's one of the first criteria. If I see a knife that falls into that criteria, I'm generally going to be pretty excited about it. Now, the next thing that really tends to excite me is when I see a custom maker, okay, someone that I'm a fan of, whether it be Peter Rosenti or Michael Laconico or Rick Hinderer, okay, whatever knife designer you want to put out there. When I see a really cool design that's now going to be available in a production knife, I tend to stay away from full customs. I just for a number of reasons, okay? Most of all, my budget just does not allow it, okay? My knife budget is like a few $100 a month. Rather than a few thousand. And so, you think about that, that would mean I'd be making one knife video a year. I'd be purchasing one knife a year. And to me, it's just I'm not interested in doing that. I like some variety. I like to change out my collection. I have some nice higher end stuff, but there's nothing that's just crazy outlandishly expensive. I tend to stay away from that stuff. So when a company is going to offer one of those custom knives that I really like and have been really interested in, but now it's going to be in a production version, then I get excited, okay? And then I start to say, hey, and this is a great example. This is the Massdrop Ferrum Forge Crux. Well, this is, this is really, really a Ferrum Forge knife. It has all of the features and shapes that we're used to seeing from Ferrum Forge. And I have owned a few actual Ferrum Forge knives and found them to be very good. And they're kind of, they're almost kind of what I would call a production custom anyway at this point. But this is a good example of what I'm talking about. So is this. This is, TJ Schwartz is a designer I really, really like. Now this is kind of different, but it more exemplifies the simplistic and yet cool and highly functional aspect. But these two are definitely designers that I'm fans of that I'm able to get a production knife at a reasonable price. So that's one of the things that I really, really look for. The other things I like are knives that have something new to offer, something interesting that's going on. So whether it be, a different deployment method or a company offering something that's a bit of a departure for them, like this knife is, maybe it's an interesting design that you don't see every day. So those kinds of things definitely appeal to me. And I'll at very least want to check them out and have them in, have a video out there about those things. So something like Field Strip Technology or the Tri-Way Pivot coming from Rick Hinderer. With lock bar inserts, when they first came out, it was like, hey, this is a really cool idea. Flipperless flipper tab, the SLT, the spring-loaded tab from the 0055 from ZT. Those are all things that I was so curious about. I just had to check out and sort of satisfy my curiosity. And then lastly, I like to see knives that I feel like are going to be confidence inspiring, something that's that I feel like I can use and enjoy without having to be too scared about it. So those are all the things that draw me into a knife. Now I'd like to tell you how my knife list, my want list, breaks down. And there are 3 categories here. There are knives that I know from experience, but I've sold for some reason or another. Sometimes it was, I was able to make a trade for something that was even harder to get, or I liked a little bit more. Sometimes it was because, there was a big purchase coming up that I needed to make. Sometimes it was because, I made a mistake. I didn't realize, quite what I had. And so I let go of a knife that I probably shouldn't have. Number 1. Number 2, there are knives that are new, different, exciting, that are just coming out that I really, really want to check out. There are a few on that list. And then number 3, there are knives that are kind of old standards that I feel like I should at least check out to make sort of my knife experience well-rounded, and some that have a fairly proven track record. So let's go ahead and start working through that list. Let me begin by talking about knives that I've already tried, but I've sold or traded for some reason. And there are reasons, okay? So let's bring in sort of some older, sort of classic designs. One of the things that I will do is, if something is really hard to get, but I've got something that's in demand but not that hard to get. So, let's say I've got a ZT of some kind. Well, the fact is, most ZT models, if you really want one, you're going to be able to find one either right away, or, if you give it a little bit of time, you'll find one on the secondary market. If you're, and so if someone says, hey, I've got this new knife that, and it's brand new, it's really limited, everyone's wanting to get their hands on one, and they say, hey, I'll trade you for such and such a ZT, that's a trade I'm often going to make, because I know I can replace that ZT with a fairly high degree of confidence, okay? And so I have let go of knives because I know that at any point if I really, really feel like I must have it, I can go ahead and get it back. So on my list of ZTs that I would like to get my hands on again are the 0560. The 2 top of my list are the 0560 and the 0462. That's the recent Sinkovich knife from this year. I sold mine, and now I'm kind of like, that was a really good knife. It was lightweight and useful and interesting, and so that's a knife I'd like to have back in the collection. But those are the 2 ZTs that are most interesting. The Benchmade Freak, because I feel like it's such a perfect example of what an EDC knife should be, can be. Okay, on that list as well would be the Cold Steel Code 4. That is one of my all-time most recommended knives. It just checks every single possible box, right? You could wear that in a dress suit, you could wear it in a pair of jeans, and you could do everything from, skin a buffalo with it to, carve off a piece of cheese or cut up some whatever, some prosciutto at a fancy dinner, and it's going to work fine for everything you could think of. Mannix Lockback is another knife that not a lot of people like. It didn't get a lot of love. I loved that knife, and I had a guy that kept offering me stuff for it in trade, and finally he offered me something really good, and I took the trade, and now I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to go buy another Mannix Lockback because it's such a great knife. It's definitely my favorite out of the Mannix family. Another knife that I kind of missed the boat on, and now it's actually become a little harder to get, which is sort of sad to me, is this is not it. I'm just kind of switch out knives so you guys have some variety of stuff to look at. Is the Real Steel Megalodon. The action on that knife is honestly like nothing else. It is fantastic. And for a $200 knife to have better action than things that cost many, many times more is just outstanding. Now, here's my problem that I've come across with the Megalodon, and that is it doesn't any longer have roller bearings. The newer versions have regular ball bearings. I want a roller bearing version, so I need to find someone who's had one for a while. It's an older one. And so I have tried to buy a few recently, and I always send a message first saying, hey, is this roller bearings or is it ball bearings? And the last couple that I've seen were ball bearings. And so I just pass and wait till I find one with roller bearings. These are not cheap knives. I mean, sorry, they're not expensive knives. It's, you're only going to pay, $150 or so for a Megalodon. But the trick is finding the exactly right one. The next one is the Cold Steel Talwar. I really want a Talwar back. It's such a good knife. The grip is great. The blade shape is great. Yes, it's a little scary and tactical, but it is so practical in use that I kind of miss having one around just to make that point. Even if I'm making it in videos from time to time, it's nice to be able to make that point. And the last one is the WE Slipstream. Now, this is a knife that I never actually have never actually owned. I had a WE Slipstream sent to me by Zelric 42, and it blew me away. Now, the tip of the blade is a little thicker, but in my use, and I used it for all kinds of things, because specifically I had questions about, when I made my first impressions video, people were like, that blade doesn't look very practical, doesn't look very useful. So I purposely did a bunch of extra cutting with it and found it to be quite good. Okay, so based on that, you know, I'm sort of like, hey, I know the knife is really good, and I love the design. By far, it is my favorite in-house WE knife design. You know, other than that, I tend to be drawn to WE knife collaborations because I find they can build a fantastic knife. They just seem to struggle in the design department. So often I avoid their in-house designs and opt for their collaborations, but the Slipstream is a win. It is such a fantastic knife. All right, so number two, the next knife on the list, the next kind of knives, I guess, that I'm interested in are knives that are different and exciting and new, especially a new version of an older knife I tend to be drawn to. I don't know why. Maybe it's just pure curiosity, but for whatever reason, there are a few knives that I'm interested in that are just kind of brand new out, and that, you know, maybe some of them haven't even been released yet. But let me go ahead through this part of my list. The At Purpose Blades collaboration with WE Knives, that looks really, really interesting. And I told you guys, you know, so here you go. I am more interested in WE Knife collaborations than I am in their in-house stuff. And the At Purpose Blades collab looks really good. Liangma Warrior 2, he's come up with a variation on the Warrior 2 with marble carbon fiber inlay, and it is gorgeous. I've wanted a Warrior 2 for a long time. I've repeatedly tried to get my hands on one, and it just hasn't worked out. I will say this, okay? The prices that Liang asks for his Ria knife collabs, they're not outlandish, but they don't tend to, you know, you can probably get it for about $100 less if you wait and pick it up on the secondary market, which is what I'm going to do with the Warrior 2. Okay, it's really, really cool, and I really, really want one, but I am going to, you know, hold my enthusiasm back and wait till I can pick one up off of Blade Forums or something like that. Next on the list, thinking of new stuff, interesting stuff, I love Rick Hinderer knives. I especially love, I'm a real XM18 fanboy. Okay, now that is the FireTac, and you'll see a review of that knife coming up in the next couple of days, maybe even tomorrow, depending on when this video goes up. The Gen 6 XM18s with the tri-way pivot, that is on my short list. I don't have an XM18 in the collection right now, and I really am missing it. I recently, you know, I was sent this knife to review and check out, and all this has done to me is really, really made me miss my XM18 that much more. So I will definitely be picking up a Gen 6 XM18 with the tri-way pivot. Not only do I want to try the new pivot, but I want to have that XM18 in my collection. There's some new Spydercos that I'm really interested in. I like Spyderco, and my only frustration with them is they seem to struggle with new designs. The Para 2 is fantastic. Everything works so well on it, just in exactly the way you would want it to. Their newer stuff, sometimes that's not the case, and that can be a little bit frustrating. But and by the way, Nick Shabazz has had an Amalgam and checked it out. It's on my short list. The Amalgam, the Sabotage, and the Paisan are all on my list. I really want to get my hands on all of those. I want to own them and add them to my collection. I don't just want to get them to make a quick video. And so that may mean it's a little longer in coming, guys. Sometimes if someone offers me a knife, or if I can buy a knife and know, hey, I'm going to buy it, review it, and sell it, I may go, you know, stretch my budget a little bit to do that. These, I'm not interested in doing that. I want to own these outright, and so I will probably bide my time just a little bit so that I can spend a little less money and have them. Spydercos that are coming up, those are all exciting. Kershaw Bare Knuckle, I'm also excited about. Now, the one other thing, and this fits my previous criteria, production versions of a custom maker that I'm interested in. There are two different companies doing Massdrop threshers. Gavco threshers, Massdrop and BRS. So I don't know which one I'm more interested in. What I'll probably do is wait for the reviews to start coming out. And once I see and get a sense for which one is more to my liking, then I will pull the trigger and pick up either a BRS or a Massdrop Gavco collaboration. Next, there are knives that have been around for a long time and that I just haven't had the opportunity to try. And in some ways, I feel like my knife collection and my knife experience is deficient because of it. And these are a fairly short list, but the Shirogorov F3, I really, really like the F3. I really want to check out a Shirogorov, and that's my favorite model. And so at some point, I will try one out. They're more expensive than what I like to spend on a knife. Honestly, my cutoff is around $500, and they go for a bit more than that, around $600 or $700. So we'll see, but I do want one, and I do plan to pick one up in the not too distant future, especially if I have a line where I may be able to pick up some Shiros for a decent price. And if I'm able to make that all come together, then you may see that one sooner rather than later. Microtech SOCOM. I have wanted a Microtech SOCOM since I first got into knives, but man, they're expensive. And you know, Microtech really limits the supply on these knives, and that's a good business model, guys. You know, they do it on purpose, and I understand, to keep the value high, and it works. Okay, so you're not going to find them come up on the secondary market much. When you do, the problems that I've had anyway, when one does come up on the secondary market, it's often not quite the exact model that I want, and so I end up passing. Or if it's the exact model I want, I guess it's the model that everyone wants, and so it's stinking expensive. And so for those reasons, I haven't got my hands on a SOCOM yet. The other one that goes on this list is a Sebenza 21. I've owned two Sebenza 25s and of course the Inkosi. I've also had a Sebenza 25 in Damascus here for review and for, you know, making a video for you guys, but I've never had a 21, and it is on my list as a knife to try out. To me, I don't know, the Inkosi just connects with me more, and so if I'm going to spend money on it, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to, you know, I would, at some point, I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to get a 21 in hand and just do a review on it. So that's more where I want to go with that one. The other knife that I didn't know where to put this knife. It's been out for a little while now. It's still kind of new, but it's a well-known design. It fits into really, I guess, this is a production version of a knife I really like. I really want to try a Microtech Stitch. The problem is they're autos, and autos are illegal in Canada. Now, I have messaged with Microtech back and forth a little bit and got some indication that they may do a manual version. And so really that's what I'm waiting for. But I really, really like that design, and I really want to own one. But legal requirements prohibit me from doing so. So there you go. And that's really the only automatic knife I have. You know, there are some branches of knives I have no interest in. Balisongs, I'm not the slightest bit interested. Autos, I'm not very interested. But the Stitch is one that I really want to try out. So anyway, guys, I would love to know what is on your want list. What are the knives that you're after? What steps do you take? You know, do you look on the secondary market? Do you try to be the first one to get your hands on something? What do you guys, what's your approach when it comes to new stuff? And what do you do to manage your budget? You know, as I said, I can't just spend all the money I want. You know, if I went and just today bought all the knives on that list, one, I would I would have, you know, maxed out all my credit cards and be really in trouble financially. So it would be an irresponsible decision, but also it wouldn't be, you know, I tend to try and take the knife, go after the knives that I want in sort of small bites. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Don't forget to hit the notification icon, because subscribing means very little these days, and I think that's an effort on YouTube's part. Anyway, that's a different discussion. So yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.